Hey everybody, Forrest here with Rocky Mountain School of Photography, and today we're going to be doing part 2 of our advanced photo and video storage series. So if you have not watched part 1, it is a prerequisite for part 2. Don't skip to this part because you're going to have very little idea what's going on. Check out part 1, it's down in the description. There's also a card up there in the corner if you want to click on that. Either way, watch that first. Second disclaimer, this is going to be a longer video with more content than our traditional YouTube video. So sit down, get yourself some snacks, get yourself some coffee, maybe a notebook, whatever it is that you prefer to take notes on, and let's go ahead and dive in. The topic of today's video is if you have had enough with external hard drives and constantly needing new ones and constantly filling them up, we're gonna look more at an alternative option, which is using either a NAS or a DAS. NAS is a network attached storage. It's a big black box with lots of hard drive slots. I use one personally. We use one here at the school. They're awesome. Or a DAS, a direct attached storage, which is basically the same thing as a NAS. It just plugs directly into your computer instead of using a networked setup system. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, the big thing with NASs and DASs, you learned a lot about the advantages in our last video. Again, go watch that if you haven't. But on top of that, there are some advanced features that NASs and DASs add into the equation. So I want to take a little bit of a look at that. The first thing is that let's look at the NAS, and one of the big things that the NAS does is it attaches to your home network. Now, a lot of people see networking and they're like, oh gosh, the world is ending, right? How do I configure any of that stuff? Well, it's actually extremely easy. Most everyone has a modem, has a router, usually it's one thing, and in the back of your router you have a lot of, a few Ethernet jacks. They're like little Cat5 plugs. They look like your standard like phone jack, but a little bit bigger. All this means is that your NAS plugs into your router at home, and that's how you connect to it. You can connect to it wirelessly, you can connect to it via a wired connection. It's just becoming part of your home network. Now, with that comes some of us needing to maybe upgrade our home network to make our network faster to allow our experience using our NAS easier. So there is some more to it that we'll look at when we get into the configuration step, but don't let home network scare you. You don't have to be a networking professional to do this. It's actually very simple. The next thing is that the NAS does require a fair amount of setup. Now, by fair amount, the other options require almost no setup. Think about it. You grab an external hard drive from Costco, you pop it in your computer, you should format it first. You don't have to. You should format it first and you're good to go. That's all there is to it. There's no more configuration. NASs, they take a little bit. You gotta plug them into your network, you gotta kind of learn about it, but the results can outweigh that. The benefits can outweigh that. One big thing that a NAS has is it actually has its own CPU, its own computer inside the black box that can complete simple or complex tasks for you, which is really cool, and we'll look at some of those a little bit later. You can also connect remotely to a NAS or a DAS, or actually just to a NAS. We'll talk about DASs in a minute. You can connect remotely, which means if you have an editor or you have an assistant who needs to access your files, there's no need to like mail a hard drive back and forth. They can literally log on through a web browser or through a VPN into your home network and access your NAS remotely, which is incredibly powerful. Think about those of you who have assistants or have need of an assistant or are an assistant. There's no like memory card exchange. There's no hard drive mailing. There's no Google Drive. There's no Dropbox. It's literally a direct connection to that NAS sitting in your assistant's house or sitting at your house, however it needs to be. If you go on a trip, you can access it remotely. Pretty cool. It also allows multiple users to access simultaneously. As an example, for our videos, our main, like what you're watching right now, was edited by Jeff, but also colored by me, and some other work was sometimes done by Sarah. And in some cases, all three of us are accessing the same NAS with the same footage on it at the same time. You can't really do that with an external hard drive. You're a little bit limited by one plug. So there are definitely some limits there. Now, let's look at the DAS, or the direct attached storage. A DAS connects directly to your computer. There's no need for networking. It's just like a big box, it looks like a NAS, except there's one cable that comes out of it that you plug directly into your computer in order for connection. There's no router or anything like that. Little to no setup, very simple to set up a DAS. You basically plug it in, you pick which storage type you want, you run their little software, and boom, Bob's your uncle, you're off and running, which is great. Now, let's go look at a few more things. You'll notice that the DAS is missing some stuff, right? We didn't talk about remote access, we didn't talk about stuff like that, so we'll look at that in a minute. Redundancy. This is one place where the NAS and the DAS really shine. So in the last video, we talked about how if you use an external hard drive, and like my one wheel sticker, yeah, right? If you have an external hard drive and you're storing your images or video on an external hard drive, you're gonna want 2 more of these to copy over your main footage to or your photos to, so that if this one crashes or you drop kick it or whatever happens, you're still safe, right? Well, the cool thing is a NAS and a DAS, if configured correctly, will actually give you instant redundancy. Now, we need to be careful because people throw around the terms backup and redundant quite a bit, and I need to be very specific with my terminology here. A NAS or a DAS will give you, if configured correctly, redundancy. Redundancy meaning when you put a file onto that black box, it actually puts it on multiple hard drives inside of the same enclosure, which means if you've got 8 hard drives in the same box and one of your 8 hard drives crashes, you don't lose everything, which is really cool. In fact, you don't lose anything, which is really, really cool, okay? But it's not a backup. A backup is a external device, another hard drive that has the same data on it that's on your NAS. And preferably that extra location, that extra device is stored away from the NAS. As an example, NASs give you redundancy, but if your house burns down, you don't have redundancy. If the NAS gets destroyed, you don't have redundancy. So it's also important to have a backup of your NAS, but it's also important to have 2 backups of your external hard drive. So the NAS is kind of, or the DAS is doing the job of one of your other external hard drives. It's kind of like you have 2 drives rubber banded together, and they have instant copies of one another. If you lose this, you still lose this. It's important to have a third one, just like it's important to have a backup of your NAS or your DAS. But it does give you instant redundancy. If a drive dies, you don't lose anything. Now, a lot of you guys are used to making your own redundancy or making your own backups using something like SyncBack or Carbon Copy Cloner, which is a way to copy manually files from one drive to another drive. What I'm basically saying is if configured correctly, a NAS or a DAS negates the need for this software. It basically does it for you automatically. Now, I need you to take a second because I know there's a lot of people who are watching this who are like, wait, what? I'm literally telling you that when you connect to your NAS or you plug in your DAS, the computer will see it, and there's lots of ways to do this. I'm simplifying it. Those of you in the room who are like, I'm an advanced network engineer, you can do it lots of different ways. I know, simple. When you plug in your NAS or your DAS, your computer sees that as one hard drive, meaning if you're on a Mac, it pops up on your desktop and it says my hard drive or my NAS. If you're on a PC, you go to this PC and there's one drive, one external drive. The computer sees it as one drive. You put a file on that. If it's your Lightroom catalog, great. If it's a 10 terabyte video clip, that'd be big. 10 gigabyte video clip, great, whatever it happens to be. As soon as you put that file on the NAS or the DAS or the DAS takes care of basically redundifying that file, putting it on multiple drives inside of that single enclosure. So that as soon as it's copied over, if one of your drives dies that minute, you're safe. There's no need to run an additional backup. It's instant. Now, is it important to still back up to a cloud service or another device? Yes, but if one of the drives fails, you're safe. Hopefully that makes some sense. But to the computer, it looks like one hard drive. I know it sounds like magic, and it is. It's really cool. All right, now, NASs and DASs, how do they do this redundancy? How is this done? How is this possible? Well, it uses something called RAID. And RAID is a way that you can configure your NAS or your DAS. It's just a way of configuration. And it stands for a redundant array of independent disks. Now, this is where I lose a lot of people because people think, oh, this must be complicated. It's really not. Let's take a look. So RAID basically can provide instant redundancy, increase speed, or both. And the way that it does that is it basically uses multiple hard drives as one hard drive, and the computer sees it as one. And that's a huge advantage for a number of reasons, okay? Now, in order to use RAID, you need multiple hard drives inside of one device. And what I mean by that is if you have one external hard drive, like this is your main photo drive, you can't be like, well, Forrest, can I configure this drive as RAID? No, RAID is a redundant array of independent disks. Independent disks meaning you have multiple disks, multiple hard drives inside of the same box. So it's very important to understand that. All right, so let's look at some of the RAID types. There's RAID 0. Now, what I put next to RAID 0 here is how many failures you can handle without losing data. Well, unfortunately, with RAID 0, if any of those drives fail, you lose everything, which basically means, if you think about this, say you had a hard drive, a RAID array with 2 drives inside of it, and you set it up with RAID 0, and you copy a file to it. Well, now if either of those drives fail, you lose everything. So you've actually went from one drive needing to fail to lose everything to one of 2 drives needing to fail to lose everything. You've doubled your chances of losing everything. So RAID 0 is not a thing that I would recommend. RAID 1 can handle a single drive failure. RAID 1 is called a mirroring. It's basically if you have 2 hard drives inside the RAID array, as soon as you put a file on it, it puts 1 copy on the first and 1 copy on the second. So you could handle 1 drive failure and you would be able to still have your data safe. Quick side note, why does RAID 0 exist? Well, it exists because it makes things fast. When you put a file onto a RAID 0 array, it puts half the file on one hard drive and half the file on the other hard drive, meaning you need both drives in order to see the whole file. But what that does is it lets you add together the transfer speeds of both drives. So it makes your hard drive array twice as fast, with a little bit of loss, obviously. So that's pretty cool. RAID 5 can handle a single drive failure, but you need to have at least 3 hard drives to use RAID 5, which means if you buy a NAS with 2 drive bays, you can't use RAID 5. You would want to use RAID 1. Moving along, RAID 6 handles a double drive failure. I mentioned in part 1 of this video that I work with Amy Vitale, the Nat Geo photographer. Her work is awesome, by the way. You guys should check it out. I linked it down in the description. Amy shoots a lot of photo and video, and she's also a Nat Geo photographer. So if me being in charge of kind of Amy's file management, you could say, lost her photos, that would be bad. So Amy is configured with RAID 6. She can handle 2 drive failures inside of her box, and she still keeps all of her photos. Really important, right? There's also what's called SHR, which is Synology's proprietary version of RAID 5. There's SHR Plus, which is Synology. Synology is a brand that makes NASs, which is their version of RAID 6, and so on and so forth. So those are kind of important. My recommendation, you guys, is that you use RAID 5 or RAID 6, or if you're in the Synology world, you'd use SHR or SHR Plus. It's just the best combo of speed and redundancy that I've found. So that's really kind of where I would go with those versions of RAID. Now again, I want to hammer home, this is automatic redundancy. If you're configured with RAID 5, RAID 6, or RAID 1, you are getting an automatic redundant copy of your photo as soon as you put it on the drive. There's no waiting period. Once it's done copying, it's done. That's all there is to it. It's awesome. All right, this brings me to the question of how much storage do you need? Because I think a lot of people look at all the different NASs out there or DASs and get very overwhelmed with how much storage they might need to buy. Because of this, what I really recommend is using Synology's online tool to help you size a RAID array. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so here I am on Synology's website. If you go to Synology.com and you scroll down, they have this thing called RAID Calculator down at the footer of the page. This is what I would use to calculate this. But basically what you do is you add hard drives to this box and you see how much storage it would give you in a variety of different modes. So let's start with a couple goals. Let's say that me as a photographer, I currently have 10 terabytes of video footage and photos, and I plan on shooting about 5 terabytes a year for the upcoming time. Meaning at the end of 2020, I'm gonna have 15 terabytes, then 20, then 25, then 30, so on and so forth. And I want my RAID array or my NAS or my DAS to last, let's say 5 years. So if we're gonna shoot 5 terabytes per year for 5 years, that's 25 terabytes, plus the 10 I already have, I need at least 35 terabytes of storage, accounting for probably my camera getting to take up more space, so on and so forth. I'm gonna aim for 40 terabytes of storage. That's my goal. So I want 40 terabytes of storage, and that's a good math problem for you to run through, figure out how much you shoot per year, how much you have right now, so on and so forth. So I want 40 terabytes of storage. I also want all of my footage with 1 redundant copy as soon as I put it on the drive. So I'm gonna configure with RAID 5 or SHR if I'm in the Synology world. Not complicated math. Write it down on a piece of paper, how much you shoot per year, how much you have right now, and help you figure this out. So I'm doing RAID 5, 40 terabytes is my goal. Now, I also know that 8 terabyte hard drives right now are a pretty good price to performance ratio. So let's add 3 8 terabyte hard drives. And we just click up here on the 8 terabytes and you can see Synology slots them in right here. Now, for my RAID type down here, we said that I either wanted RAID 5 or SHR. So I could pick either RAID 5 or SHR. I've already got them picked down here. And I can see that if I buy 3 8 terabyte hard drives, regardless of how many slots my NAS has, if my NAS has 10 slots and I only fill 3 of them, that means I have 7 more to fill, which is awesome. I can expand as time goes on, right? But if I have just 3 8 terabyte drives, that gives me 16 terabytes of usable space. Now you may say, well, why aren't you getting, if you have 3 8s, why aren't you getting 24 terabytes? 3 times 8 is 24. Well, because Synology needs to use some of that for redundancy, some of that enabled to build RAID 5 in order for you to be able to do that. So that's why this calculator is important. If you want to be even safer, you could go to RAID 6 and see that with RAID 6, you need another hard drive. Let's add one more 8 into the mix here in order to even use RAID 6, and that would give you 16 terabytes of available space. So this is the way to do it. So if it were me right now, and I know that I want RAID 5 or SHR, and again, there's no right answer here. How comfortable are you with losing data? I'm a RAID 5 guy. If you're a RAID 6 and you want to handle 2 drive failures, more power to you. You're just going to buy more hard drives. I see that with 3 8 terabyte drives, I'm going to get 16 terabytes of storage. Well, that means that I instantly, if I bought 3 8s, I would have enough storage for this year, my 5 terabytes I'm going to shoot this year, plus the 10 terabytes I already have. So I would be good through the end of 2020. Well, at the end of 2020, if I got a NAS with more than 3 slots, I could buy another 8 terabyte drive and add it to the pool, bringing me up to 24 terabytes. And you guys, it's not like it's a different hard drive to the computer. When you pop a fresh 8 in there, a fresh 8 terabyte into that box, the box takes over that 8 terabyte drive and makes it part of one hard drive. It's just one drive to the computer. So you got to keep remembering that this isn't 4 separate drives. It appears just like one. So at the end of 2020, I could buy another 8 terabyte. That would bring me to 24. That would get me almost another 2 years. I could buy another 8 and I could buy another 8. And here I have 40 terabytes if I use 6 8 terabyte drives. So what am I going to do that meets my goals? Well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a Synology NAS that has 6 bays, and I'm going to fill 3 of them with 8 terabyte hard drives this year. That will get me enough for all of my current photos plus 1 year of shooting past that. At the end of this year, I'm going to buy another 8 terabytes, slot it in that drive, let Synology work its magic, and I'm up to having 24 terabytes, repeat, repeat, repeat. I might even want to buy an 8 bay or a 12 bay so that I have room for years to come with storage. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit of a game to play with yourself. You'll notice too, Synology sells, or not Synology, Seagate sells 16 terabyte drives. If you fill this thing with 16s and you use 8 16 terabyte drives, you have 112 terabytes of space. That's metric crap ton.
Metric crap ton. Metric crap ton.
That's awesome. So that's how it breaks down. That's how to work it and how to start to figure out how much storage you actually need. All right, now I want to hammer home one more important thing. We're talking about redundancy. I can't stress how important an off-site backup is. One of the big advantages of a NAS over a DAS is that the NAS has that built-in CPU, that internal computer. And what that computer can do is it can run background tasks for you. As an example, Sarah and I own a drone media company where we do drone footage, video and photo for clients around Montana and really all over the place. And our footage is backed up to a NAS. It's all actually saved on a NAS. Well, our NAS backs up to Amazon Web Services, the Amazon S3 Glacier storage, every night at midnight, meaning if I do anything to that NAS for our business, it's backed up to Amazon's cloud service so that if my house burnt down and my NAS was gone, all of my stuff is safe. And I don't have to click a button to do that. As soon as I put it on the NAS every night at midnight, my NAS searches itself and sees what's changed and uploads those changes to AWS. So having a NAS makes the offsite backup very, very simple if you're going to use a cloud service. Alternatively, you might want to actually back your NAS up to another NAS. If you have one that lives at work and one that lives at home, or one that lives at your house and another lives in an assistant's house, you can have one NAS wirelessly through the web back up to another NAS very, very easily. So that's totally an option, but you want to make sure you have an offsite backup somewhere. Now, we touched on this a little bit before, but I want to say one more thing about the whole NAS versus DAS situation, and that is the ease of expansion. Both NASs and DASs are extremely easy to build up as you shoot more. You just want to make sure that you buy one with enough bays, enough drive bays, drive slots to fill as your needs grow. I keep bringing up Amy Vitale because I think she's a great example. She shoots a lot of footage, so we needed to buy one with a lot of slots for her so that she had a lot of slots to fill as she shot more photo and more video. So basically it boils down to this in the NAS-DAS conversation. The DAS is easier to configure. Like I told you guys originally in this video, if you plug in a direct attached storage into your drive, it's just gonna work. And some great examples of a DAS is like the Pegasus series from, I think it's Promise Technologies has their Pegasus series. Those are awesome. You plug them right into your computer and your computer thinks, oh look, a hard drive's plugged in. Let's go, let's roll. The NAS is gonna take a little bit of configuration. NASs will generally be cheaper. NASs will be a little bit harder to configure, but NASs also allow you to do cloud backups and things like that, where a DAS, for the most part, won't. So it's worth looking at the two of them for sure. It's worth kind of considering them both. For me, a NAS was a no-brainer because of the cloud backup and because of the cheapness. I wanted a very cheap cost per terabyte for my storage. All right, so let's look at a few equipment recommendations for you guys. And I just grabbed these from Synology. I also recommend QNAP. They're a great company, as well as Promise Technology. I've seen great things from all three of those brands. Again, this was recorded in 2020, 2019, so these model numbers will change as time goes on. But basically, as your budget starter, I think the Synology DiskStation DS918 Plus is a great starter for a lot of people. It's got 4 bays, so obviously you'll have to go on their little builder and see how much you can fit with 4 bays of different size hard drives. It's got a nice CPU, so it can handle some good stuff. It's got RAM, again, it's a little computer, and it's got a 200 megabyte read speed. So that's faster than a portable drive. It's faster than a single bigger drive. It's not quite SSD level performance, but if you're a photographer looking for a really big drive, this is a great way to do it. Now, $400 does not include the drives that go into it. I didn't put drive prices here because they change super often, but you're gonna wanna get something from Seagate or something from Western Digital to slot into this drive in order to fill it up. The next one that I want to look at is another Synology one. It's the DS1618 Plus. This is a 6 bay, so this is what I would look at in that example I gave of 5 years, 5 terabytes per year, 10 terabytes right now, RAID 5. This is what I would be looking at. 2,000 megabyte per second read speed. Again, got to remember from our last video, bottlenecks. That's assuming no other bottlenecks. This is what it's capable of. It's also 10 gigabit capable, which is something that we will talk about in a future video when we talk about setting up a NAS. But again, the price does not include storage, so you're gonna have to look at that on your own. Moving up, there's the 1819 Plus. This is actually what we use here at the school. Very fast, a little bit more expensive, doesn't include storage, but it's 8 bays. So you can have more storage later on down the line to fill up. We've also got the big boy. This one is 12 bays, same speed, again, just giving you more storage, more options. And then obviously hard drives to put in them. My recommendation is Seagate Iron Wolf Pros or Western Digital Gold drives. Those are both made to be inside of a NAS or a DAS. You can get those on B&H. You can get those from pretty much anywhere. All this stuff is buyable from B&H. I'll put some links down in the description as well so you guys can kind of follow along. But you want drives that are built to work inside of a NAS. They're also internal drives. You'll notice that though they don't have nice enclosures on them, they're made to work inside of a separate device. So those are all great choices. If you're more of a DAS person and you want the simple, just plug it in and go off to the races, the Promise Technologies Pegasus 3 R4 is awesome. It's $1,300 for a 4 bay, but it does include storage. So that's pretty awesome. You get your storage already included. The drive bays are already full. So that's kind of nice. All right, so that is about where I want to conclude this video. I think that hopefully you have a pretty good idea now of NAS versus DAS and which one would be a better suit for you. I'm not going to talk as much about the DAS setup because the little instruction manual that comes with it is going to be enough for most people. And if that's you, go buy one. Go off and do it. If this seems like something that you want to do, go get yourself a DAS. Check out Pegasus for sure, the Pegasus series from Promise. They do a great job. In the next video, we're going to look more at NASs. If you want the cloud backup, you want the remote access, you want the configurability of your own device, we're going to look at how to set up a NAS, how to build out your network at home in order to do it in a very simple, easy to understand way that really anyone can do. So if you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, you know what to do. If you guys have a question about any of this stuff, leave it in the comments section down below. I'd be happy to answer it. Check the links down in the description to get to these products that I've linked here so you can check them out for yourself. And lastly, subscribe to our video, or our channel, not our video. Subscribe to our channel for future content. We put out videos every single week. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks to Canon for sponsoring this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Woo!